Lake Oro, Acacia. The Acacians, like the Mowagans, use their country as a central state, and their cities is the center of region, state capitals, towns, and little pass-by lands. Then one of the towns of the 750s development, Lake Oro, who were fighting in World War II against the Nazis and the witches of Galveston. The war would lead the people broke around Lake Oro. Plus, they had to rebuild from the war. They had lost the money then, and so they built gangs and street cliques. Their main colors would be red and yellow, the main colors of Acacia. Their first clique would be Wild and YOB standing for Year 9 Boys, which was the representation of the war of Year 9, which was the first world war of the fantasy Earth 1. Champlo the gangster was the originator of the YOB. Year. Gangs will start from the divine truth, the knowledge of the world. The occasion descendants would take their hustles and craft and put them inside of a crew in the gang and use what they knew on the streets. This also meant the knowledge of energy, which they knew Earth One only had partial amounts of the real energy. Hero Nation would start officially from the Galstein and Oro Mowagan government. They was they made their crew out the most athletic and powerful warriors. Some of them was even scheduled to have powers, especially if they used the certain technology. But the governments would make these gangs to combat the Year 9 just in case they go bad or something like that. Besides YOB being a union or united gang between all races of Galstein and Acacias, they prove that they aren't witches and they're just to get money and continue enjoying Lake Oro. The second gang to sprout from the area will be known as the Golden Knights, GK, sometimes referenced as TGK. The Golden Knights will look up to the YOBs and form their gang just like their similar. The Golden Knights are from a predominantly Mowagan neighborhood, and most of them are Mowagan though. The color gold represented their home country. Africa, Mowagan was known for gold, and was their main color they used. Lake Oro will once again find its business boom, and the metropolitan area will be booming with business, money, and schools and places to go for the community to have fun. The west side was break into three neighborhoods: North End, Coastal Plains, and Oro City. The wealth will return to the city. Most of the city will move to Oro City, moving away from North End bad neighborhood and the gangs of Coastal Plains. The YOB gang would expand to the Lake Palique area, which is a different like Parish County division area of the same city. Lake Palique wouldn't have as much violence as North End or Coastal Plains. They violence will level up with more with Oro City. These first local street gangs will be integrated into Lake Oro community permanent, while the Hero Nation actually got a school for being a hero in the gang, where they exposed the truth about gangs. Yes, gangs did start as a good thing to protect their community and stuff like that, but gangs using their truth and knowledge and wisdom to actually compete into street activities, giving them a more menacing angel look. It wasn't hero but real. They devised their heroism of actually killing villains. Like if they catch a villain, they would rather kill him than let him go. You know what I'm saying? Before giving him a chance to do the same thing again. So the gangs would be labeled as a violent street gang and a mafia, considered armed and dangerous besides homicidal to villains, which was looked at as a good thing. It wasn't really looked at as a bad thing. So these gangs was allowed to stay, which they would adapt gangs from the Los Rio Valley area, which is the Los Angeles, meaning they got more like Crips and Blood type gangs now, like, you know what I'm saying? But this is like more like, you know what I'm saying, they got cartels, mafia, Crips and Blood type gangs now, like, which starts a street war. Which, due to their strong blood and history, they will force the gangs to prove and make sure that they actually with what they saying that they was about doing. Which they adopt their gang from Shinobis. It was another fraction of gang in the Los Rios area. Even though they didn't start it, They was looked at as top rail. I'ma say they started to kill all villains, and that was their ultimate goal of they set. And it was relying peace after. The Milwaukee and the Girlstown would come together for more art. The Kwanzaa being more African, and the Merry Christmas being more European. More images depicting fate and the strong blood that the occasions carried was being promoted and posted on shirts. Occasions unite and all the community accepted with love the clothing that they got. The Mawaiians will even figure out how to integrate their old community and their ancestors into their community, naming highways and avenues after Kodansa and the Oro family, Oro tribe, besides GQ and the Mawaiian tribe. Plazas, malls, and museums would be named after the people that they names in history that they still have recorded. They brought up the old angelic images. They rewrote the old rich codes of GQ modernized. As times get better, the devil will rear his ugly head again, causing the streets to go back into an ugly street spiral of violence as more gangs and more crews start to pop up, and these gangs don't look up to YOB. Coastal plains would be one of the many reasons that Lake Oro would become one of the murder capitals of Acacia. With the chance of becoming a victim of a violent crime being 49 out of 1,000, PS homicide count for coastal plain would be between 200 and 300 people, with Lake Oro highest homicide count being 934. During mid 1800s and late 1800s, the Wild West, the lawless Wild West, would grow up, sprouting from Shinobi village sets and also Lake Oro sets, becoming more turf than any gang, playing all the wildlands from the south to the east and part of the west. These times was known as harsh time, and only the strong would survive. And also, these are the eras where most of the shootings started to happen. The 1800s also seen a boom in more fast food and business stores. They even built apartments on water, like completely on water. They had built more Japanese or Hassani areas that was dedicated to more Asian communities and more schools to combat the rising violence between gangs. The early 1900s would be all about the hero gangs as they get rid of the old lawless gangs in the Wild West that bandarized the old crews and gangs of the village type gangs and Lake Oro type gangs. These gangs will span from the east to the west coast. What seemed like gangs and these gangs in around the 1930s and 1940s would only expand to bring up a new gang that was trying to defeat the hero gangs and the other gangs that allied themselves with the hero gangs. Not all would be a part of a villain or a demon gang that started, but a lot of them would be. In the 1940s, they would have a boom in recruitment in gangs. There would be less gangs being made through the streets through the threat of the rising violence of the old street gangs. This trend would last for the next 20 to 30 years into the 1960s and the 1970s, where gang violence really took a turn for the worse. During the next few years, Lake Oro crime would go up and down, taking turns from going up to homicide rates as far as 800 and 900 again, and low as 150 homicides a year. The Hero Nation stood strong even though it was trendy to call them rats and fake gang members on the streets. The Hero Nation wanted to show them that their name calling didn't matter, and them stand strong and mattered more. During the 80s and 90s, the drug and crime rate would pick right back up to how it used to be. Well, national homicide rates boosting back up as far as 900, and some cities low as 500, but it's still considered high as a national average crime rate. Some cities even boasted the homicide rate of 1,200 homicides. The early 2000s was still chaotic for gangs, but they were starting to calm down from the 80s and 90s drug era and trying to rule all the streets, taking over drug turf and gang territory. Nevertheless, the gang violence was still over the YOBs versus the non-accepted type of gangs. It was still a alliance between the street war and the Shinobis. The Hero Nation will become basically one of the biggest gangs through the whole Caucasian states, due to the popularity of them having a governor behind them, and every time That they recruit new members through a school systematic program. Everybody that's going through the school has a chance of being recruited into the Hero Nation gang. During the 2005 to 2020 era, Lake Oro will have the highest high school equivalent rate in the country. Besides a ranking school that was considered number one in the country, they had some of the worst schools that contained nothing but violence, gangs, and crews, such like YOB versus the enemy sets. That basically wraps up the history to the timeline present of Lake Oro.